After the Norman invasion there was a big gap where people weren't writing in English from 1066 to 1200, but were writing in French and Latin instead. People were still speaking in English, just all the documents produced were in French and Latin. Things started being written in English again after the French people in England started losing their power, and with that the French language lost its reputation as the high-class and snobby language. This distaste started during the end of the 1200s. Back then, the English language was a source of pride for the English people, leading people to speak English more. Then from 1337 to 1454, the Hundred Years' War led people to dislike French people more and more, so they spoke English to feel patriotic to their country. After that, the Black Death wiped out about a third of the English population, which led to the lower class people starting to gain power, and since they were already the people speaking English more, the language became more popular in writing, especially in church sermons, prayers, and carols. After this, English kings spoke English mostly, which was different from before when the majority of kings did not speak English at all, but spoke in French. This gap of English not being written much led to more English documents, both in number and in types, and also English being used for more public purposes. The gap in English writing ended up changing the language more. There were quite a few changes in writing system rules. For example, SC became SH and HW became WH. There were also changes in pronunciation, for example the loss of the initial H in a cluster and the loss of the final N in possessive pronouns, and the addition of N to some words beginning with a vowel. When English re-emerges, there is so much French in it because in simple terms, French has been used primarily for a couple of centuries, so it would only make sense that English retained parts of the language when it became more popular again. Many Norman English children didn't even know how to speak French, which became a problem when they were sent back to France to study. Since French was mostly a language spoken by high-class people, the majority of French words that came into English were applicable to situations that high-class people specifically would be in. Since the people who brought back English writing were peasants, they wouldn't have words in their language for these things that the high-class French people brought into the country. English was also not a very cemented language, as it was made up of very many different dialects, which made it easy for other words from different languages to seep in. When the Normans invaded England, they brought much more than just their rule and influence over society, but they also brought their language. The French language both influenced and mixed with an earlier form of English to make a language closer to what we now call English.